The soil preparation's probably the most important aspect of having a nice lawn. The soil prep is the same for grass seed, hydro seed or Readylawn. It has to be done right. If it's done in a rush way, or the soil is bumpy when the lawn goes down, or unevenly consolidated, everything's going to settle down and you'll end up with a bumpy, uneven lawn. So spending the time at the beginning to get the soil right is really important. The process you go through is you cultivate what's there. Once you've stripped all the old organic material off, sticks and stones and builder's material and anything else that's there, to have a nice clean soil to start with. And then you want to go ahead and cultivate the soil to about 3 to 4 inches down to get a nice even tilth on the soil. So a nice even light friable soil to work with. If you've got low areas, more than 100 mils deep, by all means bring in some new screen topsoil. And by topsoil we want a nice loamy soil, not too much organic if it's a manufactured product, so a sandy loam type product rather than a very organic-y product. The organic products tend to decay down and lose their volume, so just a regular loamy topsoil is by far the best product to use. So now the rotary hoeing's done, the levelling process begins, and this is the time-consuming part to get right. We use these special rakes available from pretty much every hardware store, but if you've got a rake and a piece of timber lying around, nail it on and you've got a ready-made screed board. So the good thing about having it slightly wider is you even out the humps and hollows a lot easier. So we make a little one of these, easily to use, and makes a much better result than just a regular rake. Once the cultivation's been done and you've done an initial level, the reconsolidation process is pretty important to get right. So we do that by healing. So the healing is a more effective way than using a roller because it takes any little soft spots out as you go, and you do an initial heal, another level, and then decide whether you're firm enough to carry on with the install or whether you need to give it another go. To do that, you want to be able to walk around on the soil without sinking in any more than about 5 millimeters. Once you get to that point and it's evenly consolidated over the whole lawn area, there's no hard spots, no soft spots, then you're ready for the next step. So we've done a healing, another re-leveling, we've healed it a second time. Now the fertiliser's been applied, and Alex is just mixing the fertiliser into the last bit of surface. So the preparation's all finished, we're happy with the outcome, it's nice and level, evenly consolidated. So now we're ready to put the fertiliser's been put on, now we're ready to install some Readylawn. So all you really need for that is either a half moon turf knife, which is a specialist bit of equipment, or the good old trusty steak knife, bread knife, anything that's lying around will do nicely to slice the Readylawn to whatever shape you need it to. So the first roll Alex is rolling out. We try not to stand too much on the grass. We find if you work off the topsoil, you can rake out any footprints that you might put in as you go. We've hung the end over a little bit because it's not a square end, so we can trim that off later. And you want to keep your turf laid in nice straight lines. Butt your edges are nice and tight together. You don't want any gaps between each roll, you want them nice and tight. So we like to lay Readylawn in nice straight lines. So we're coming up to a curve at the end, we're going to overlap that curve and we're going to trim that off, keep our lines nice and straight. If you're laying up against existing grass, you want to have your soil about 10 millimeters below the previous lawn or garden edging or concrete edging. So if you have any type of edging, have your finished soil height about 10 millimeters below the existing edge that you're working to. That allows for the thickness of the grass. So Alex is running a border on this job, and that just helps us have a nice tidy cuttable edge between the two new rolls of Readylawn. So the lawn we're laying today is a brown top and fescue, what we call our superfine blend, very popular in the South Island. At some point you're going to need to trim your Readylawn to shape it in. So we've got a couple of overlaps here, one through here and one across here. We've overlapped it a fair way, and we've done that on purpose, because what we can do is we can carefully run along that edge with your sharp knife, and that's going to perfectly fit into that edge there, work it in so you don't have any overlaps, nice and tight together. The neat thing about that is this piece here, if you spin it around, is a perfect match for the next run. So there you go, so you've already pre-cut your second run. That also helps with keeping your staggered Readylawn laying pattern. You don't want to have all your joints in a line, you want to stagger the joints as you roll your Readylawn out. We're fortunate today, it's quite a cool day. It's a little bit shady, so the turf is holding its moisture really well. On a hot summer's day, Readylawn can dry it in a matter of hours, especially if it's sitting on pallets for a wee while before you get to install it. So keeping the Readylawn damp and moist is vital to have a successful outcome. So things to watch out for is the edges drying out a little, and the ends, the flap on top of the roll. are the two bits that tend to dry out. So if you find on the pallet it's getting that silvery colour, you want to give it a wet down before you install it. And then if it's a hot day, as you install the Readylawn, it's good to have someone watering at the same time. So once the lawn is down, then it wants to drink enough to just soak through the turf to get a little bit of a good moisture base in the lawn. And then after that you roll it, and then you give it a really good soak when you're finished. So Alex is just hand watering. There's a range of sprinklers you can put on it, from the cheap little $15 cone sprinklers to the big fancy wavy ones which go over. Any sprinkler's fine, you've just got to make sure you get the water on correctly. So how much water do you put on your newly laid Readylawn? Well, it's difficult to answer, but how we work it is you have a look under a corner of the grass as you're watering, and you want to have that water soaking through the turf so it's quite damp, and again just into the top of the soil. So once you get to that point, before it gets too wet, then it's a perfect time for rolling or tamping. Now the last step after you've done that initial watering is to tamp or roll the lawn. This is quite important. It gets a really good stick between the soil and the turf base. It gets any little air bubbles out. It gets rid of any little last footprints or little clods that are on the surface, and just gets a really good bond between the two surfaces. This is really important to allow the roots to grab through into the soil and start growing very quickly. If there's any air pocket through a footprint underneath the turf base, the roots won't grow through that air, and you'll have an area which probably go brown or won't take just as very quickly. So we need to make sure that all those air pockets are taken care of and any little lumps are taken out. By doing that, we either roll it with a water fill or heavy roller, or tamp it. Now, if you don't have a tamper or a roller, that's not a problem. If you've made a screed board or you've made a wide rake with what we looked at before, it's an ideal machine to use to just tamp the lawn down. It doesn't have to be anything special. So tamping on the whole lawn, especially the edges. Now the last thing you can do after you've laid your brand new Readylawn is, if you're in the heat of summer, apply hydration granules. Pour in the correct amount. So we've only got a small piece of lawn here, around 15 to 30 grams per square metre. And they're going to help maintain the moisture and retain the moisture in the surface, reduce the watering requirements. The other thing you can do is, of course, the Accelerapin granules, if it's the time of year to apply them, which is around October through till February, March. And by all means, that'll just give a bit of protection for any grass scrub or perina that are still in the soil or have been laying eggs during their latest flight. So both options, optional, but a good idea if you want to protect your lawn long term.